Yo, what's up, everyone? This is Nick here, back with another episode of Meet the Plebs. And today I got at BTCBAP on Twitter, and he's been heavily requested to be on the show by 50 Sat on Twitter. If y'all know him, he's a good homie of mine, and I know he's friends with BAP. And also, BAP did a great presentation for me and Optimist over at Bitcoin Kindergarten. So I knew I really wanted to have him on after that and share his story a bit. So, BAP, thank you for coming on. And how's it going, dude?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Nick. Yeah, it's good, man. Happy Sunday. Yeah, bro. I'm stoked to be on here. Bitcoin's been, a big, probably the biggest thing that's happened in my life so far. So excited to get to share a little bit of the story with the world, man.
Let's go. So let's just dive right into it. How did you find Bitcoin, and what's your rabbit hole story?
So how did I find Bitcoin? It's my journey in Bitcoin is probably, it was several years, from, discovery of what Bitcoin was to, actually where I am today. So, I guess fast forward, let's rewind back to 2012. My roommate in college, I was in economics studying and learning about monetary policy, learning about the financial crisis, just being, a couple years out. I mean, I graduated high school in 2010. So, I basically saw the financial crisis happen, right as I was learning what economics and monetary, money and interest rates and all these new concepts were. So my roommate, we were we were into computers and stuff, and he told me about this Bitcoin thing, and truthfully, I didn't even really pay much attention to it because I didn't really understand it. So, that's when I first heard about it. So, did nothing with it until 20, so I graduated college in 2014, and I actually when most people get when you graduate from college, you go on a vacation, a trip, a senior graduation gift, you know what I mean? Well, I had asked my parents for silver bars, right? Because I was reading up on Peter Schiff and all this stuff, man, and just knew that the dollar was crap, knew that the money supply was a big issue, but I hadn't quite put my finger on Bitcoin. So, in 2016, a couple years later, I guess Bitcoin was probably about 2000, or maybe it was early 2017. It was March or April of 2017. I started getting into Bitcoin, reading about it, seeing the price go up, and just finally was all right, I got to buy some of this. Cause I remembered my roommate having it at $25, and, seeing it at 2000 was just mind boggling. Right. And so, I mean, here we are now. So, but I had only bought, I think maybe I think it was a half a Bitcoin at the time. And so it was it was still a lot of money for me being, in my early 20s. But, that was kind of where I first got into Bitcoin. So, then, I worked as a financial advisor in my career, and in 2020, last year, I left the financial industry, and the money printing, that's really what woke me up, right? So I never did, I continued to stack, through, I actually had bought a little bit. I think I had $50 a week recurring or something, pretty small throughout 2017, 2018. But I never really took a big plunge into it until I read Robert Breedlove's Number Zero article back in the summer. That summer article that I had read, and then I think I read a couple of months later, I had read Croesus's Bitcoin in the American West. Have do you know that article? You know what I'm talking about?
I do not.
Yeah, we'll link it. It was cool, like, because he talks about like how basically like Bitcoin is like the pioneers of the West, right? And like the people who, you got Pierre Rochard and so such that are like the original pioneers, and then you've got us that like come along like behind that are, it's like still pretty brave, but like it's he draws a lot of analogies to like the gold rush and like the waves of people that came. And I started to realize that over the summer when I left the financial industry, I got to really like stop drinking the Kool-Aid of that stuff, and really started to go down the rabbit hole because I wasn't working. I was off for a couple months, so I remember distinctly watching the halving in, I guess, was it May, June of last year?
I think it was May.
Yeah. So I remember watching that, and like still at this time was like kind of like reading about, honestly, dude, I was like reading about Ethereum and like some of these other like blockchain platforms because it hadn't really like hit yet. It hadn't clicked for me yet. And yeah, so then but back in August, I started like over the summer, I started increasing my DCA quite a bit, even though I wasn't working. And in August, after I read Breedlove's article, man, it clicked, and I realized like Bitcoin is not an investment; it's money, and that was really between the August time of reading Breedlove's article about the number zero and early November when I read Croesus's BTC American West article. I'd say that completed my descent to where I was like, I'm convinced, so kind of a long journey for me from when I first started back in 2012 to the end back in 2020, where I decided that Bitcoin was really going to be my thing, and my store of value.
That's awesome, dude. I don't want to, if this question you can't answer because it doxes you, you don't have to answer it, but could you explain why you left the financial industry?
Yeah. So, I mean, partly disagreement with, how the firm managed investments truly. Like, they believed in diversified portfolios, as many investment firms did. And that includes bonds. And includes, particularly for older people, it includes a much higher allocation of bonds. And knowing what I know now about how money supply affects the devaluation of money and seeing it before my eyes, the helicopter money that was written about. I forget which economist that was. Was it Greenspan that talked about the helicopter money? I'd have to look it up, but seeing that just was like, I couldn't do it with a straight face anymore. And yeah, man, it just kind of all hit a precipice at the same time that the market was collapsing, and realized that that something had to give, and that was it. Because, like I said, it wasn't until I removed myself from that day-to-day spewing the typical spiel about diversified investment portfolios and valuations and the stock market this and the stock market that. It wasn't until I really removed myself from all that on a day-to-day basis that I was able to really peel back the onion and kind of like change my lens to where I was able to see Bitcoin for what it actually was, and not for what I was being told it was to tell to, clients.
That's awesome to hear, dude. It really is. And moving on to my next question is, how has Bitcoin changed your life personally? It sounds like you've changed a lot as an individual over the past few years, especially recently in the past year.
Yeah, man. The last year, gosh, we're coming up right on a year now, just about, it's tomorrow's the beginning of March. Man, I'd say like, I've always been pretty frugal, but like now I really I save everything, man. I used to direct like most of my income towards investments, and now I don't direct any towards any investments, only to Bitcoin. And I direct a much larger percentage of my earnings to future savings in the form of Bitcoin. So if you're not stacking, look out, because I'm stacking your sats from you, and I'm not getting rid of them. So, I think, I think like just having that kind of consistent measure, that, that something that can actually compound your savings, something like, we hear like our grandparents, and I kind of talked about this in the inflation talk that you guys had me on in kindergarten, about how, grandparents used to like say, oh, the power of the nickel, and, put it in your piggy bank and whatnot. And, I feel like our generation, we never really got the opportunity to really save, right? Like, interest rates have been so low for so long that the only way to actually earn a return on your money and savings is to invest it in the stock market, which naturally was why I went into that as a career. So, give Bitcoin now, and this like ability for money to actually be able to compound, just makes me knowing and understanding how compounding interest works and how compound effects work, and how Bitcoin supply is the inverse of compounding. It's the the halving. So you've got the double force in action there, and really just it creates a huge behavioral incentive not to waste your money, like, and it's a relatively, what I would say, like it's the one consistent in a changing world, like it feels like life is constantly just like change. Like, I remember like when I was younger, like I got my first computer when I was like 9 or 10. I built my first computer when I was 13 or 14. Now I've got 4 computers in my house. I've got Raspberry Pis. I've got, like all these networking devices. Like things are just getting crazy. Like life is changing so fast. And I feel like it's not only is it changing fast, it's changing faster every year. And Bitcoin's that consistent, block by block, every 10 minutes, no matter what. The beauty of the design of the difficulty adjustment. And, so I think it's changed my life in that way, to like, I realized like the value of time. Like I'm more direct with people now. I'm transparent. Like I don't BS as much as I used to. It's, time is energy, man. And energy is proof of work. Mm-hmm. Proof of work is Bitcoin.
Yeah. And, time is energy, and, Bitcoin just incentivizes, you being truthful and honest and stuff. And that's awesome to see. And two things I wanted to touch on is earning a large percentage using a large percentage of your earnings to allocate to Bitcoin every paycheck is something that I love seeing, the transition of people over time allocate more and more and more of their paycheck to Bitcoin. I remember when I first got into Bitcoin, I was putting like 50 to 60% of each paycheck in Bitcoin, and I thought I was like doing pretty good. And then you go on Bitcoin Twitter and people are like, what is that? An allocation for ants? Like if you're not doing like 80% at least, like, those are rookie numbers. You got to get them up, and you're like, oh shit, like I kind of do got to get them up because there's only 21 million, and these fools are outstacking all of us.
That's it, dude. I mean, that's like Michael Saylor had said, my biggest fear is that you're going to stack sats faster than me. And that is my biggest fear. That's why I stack like a madman. And, some may say I'm irresponsibly long Bitcoin, but the reason that I stack sats is aggressively is like, because when I was working in the financial industry, I made a lot more money than I do now. And had much more disposable income to save, but I saved much less. I actually like over the summer, like when I stopped or when I started going down the rabbit hole, I actually stopped drinking alcohol too. And that's been like, 7-8 months now. And it's kind of like giving me a reason to want to live longer, like just to see this whole Bitcoin thing play out, So like, I think that's been like, even though I make less money now, I stack more aggressively as a percentage of my income than I ever have, because I view Bitcoin as actually something reliable to save into. Mm-hmm. And so now that I have something that I know is going to be there, I feel more confident in saving because I have a vehicle to actually save into. Whereas like putting money in savings accounts was never an option because interest rates were always, less than inflation. And putting money in stocks was always risky. And, being a financial advisor, I knew that stocks were overpriced. I mean, to some degree, but, at least based on historical norms. But, in the everything bubble, as many like to call it today, it's nice to have something where I feel, I understand and can reasonably invest in.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome to hear, dude. Especially about the alcohol thing. Congrats on that. And
thanks, bro.
One more thing I wanted to touch on for this question was putting money in the bank. I like how you made the comparison. Like, oh, you said your grandma says, save your nickel in the bank. My dad is a boomer and says the same exact shit. He just says, take your money, put it in the bank, and don't touch it. Like it's safe there long term. It's like it's
and he means well.
Advice.
I mean, that's the thing. Like the boomers, like they all like, think about like our grandparents, right? Like people that knew hard money, like grandparents, like older parents, like if depending on how old you are, like people who were born between like the 20s and the 60s, like people who actually had a life with hard money. They actually used to see money compound and save. They still think that money, like that it still works that way. And understandably so, because it did at one time. And it's really like the people that were born in like the 70s to the 90s that like are so confused because they've never known a world without fiat.
100%, dude. And moving on to my next question is, what is like the best thing and the dopest thing about Bitcoin to you overall?
Dude, so you had kind of hit on this, like the whole concept of rules without rulers, the incentives like that Bitcoin just creates. It makes people work together who don't like know each other. Like I've always like really been somebody who doesn't really like the idea of rulers. Like, I mean, people say like, I don't like to, you could say like, I don't like to follow the rules, but like, that's not it. Like, I don't like to follow dumb rules. And like rulers are the force that keeps dumb rules around, like otherwise like they would just be eradicated. And so the concept of just like this, like enforcement without an enforcer is just incredible to me. How everybody just like agrees to the same behavior same standards, just like based on behavioral incentives, like Bitcoin is like just as much a money as it is like a psychological experiment. I mean, like it makes all of us do the same thing and it points us all in the same direction. And if you think the same way, it eventually all roads lead to stacking sats and Bitcoin maximalism in my mind. I mean, I was once just, like I said, it took years of me because I was in investments. And so I looked at Bitcoin and crypto as like a diversified portfolio, right? Like I need a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of this. And then I realized, no, these aren't investments. This is money. So the way that it kind of guides everyone from different backgrounds and different parts of the world and all to the same conclusion is kind of amazing. And that like it puts in like to that end of realignment of incentives, like it, to me, it enforces that like thing that we all kind of instinctively feel, but have been just like confused by our whole life, which is that like money's not supposed to just lose value over time. Like risk taking is scary. Like you're not supposed to be comfortable just dumping a quarter of your income in stocks that you know nothing about because you haven't researched the companies, because you don't know how their accounting practices work or their competitive risks or their regulatory threats. Like you don't like, you shouldn't feel just like, okay, like, and putting all of that in a 401k, and then like the mutual fund companies charging expense ratios on top of it, and your 401k administrator charging on top of that, and the fees on top of that. And it's just like the normal person just gets screwed every step of the way. Right. And like the whole idea of not having to invest money anymore, like invest, you know, like I've got quotes in my hands, you just can't see them. Like the whole idea of that, like, is incredible to me. Like, after working investments as long as I have, and it's just like completely changed my worldview. And there's several guys I know that work in investments that, you know, some were like, you know, good friends, and I'm seeing their kind of rabbit hole journey unfold as we speak, where they're kind of coming to these same conclusions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, dude, that's it always gets me so bullish when I think, because now we have something like the world has a store of value problem, right? We don't have this one medium where we can store all of our value and safely. That, you know, a lot of people right off the bat think it's the dollar, but you can't save in the dollar because it's constantly getting printed, it's constantly losing purchasing power. So people have to, you know, quote unquote, save. It's not saving, it's investing, but people see it as savings by buying risky stuff like stocks. Now we have this one safe medium of exchange. I mean, this one safe store of value. And it's like, it's kind of like Bitcoin Tina says, it's like the riskless asset. It's like you can store your wealth and your time in Bitcoin and not have to worry about anything else. Like you don't have to worry about investing it or anything. You can invest it if you want to, but you can just keep it in Bitcoin. And I just see a huge wall of money from stocks and real estate and other shit, gold, that's just ready to pour into Bitcoin. Like it gets me so bullish when I think of it in that way.
Yeah, I mean, everything will be priced in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The investing side, like I love Tina's stuff. You know, he's, especially because he comes from that background too, like the investment background, I believe, just based on listening to his stuff. But yeah, the investment side of Bitcoin, like, or the lack of investment, like the lack of needing to invest, is awesome because it gives you, like, if you don't want to take risk, you have an option now. And I think that's like the problem why stocks are so, like, you know, overvalued. I mean, it's that like people are forced to take risks when they shouldn't be. And it's just, it continually inflates this bubble of assets, of everything. Like house prices are way overpriced, but like people need a store of value because their money is no longer a store of value. So their house is now a store of value. And so you nailed it, Nick. Like we have a store of value problem, and Bitcoin fixes that.
Mm-hmm. And then just one more thing I wanted to touch on with that is that in the very beginning of your answer, when you're talking about rules without rulers, like something we've seen multiple times, and like bad people will come into the space and try and control Bitcoin. Like, you know, we had it with the New York Agreement in 2017. We've had it with like Craig Wright. Even people who badmouth Bitcoin today, who we say know nothing about it, but I think they know enough of it to know that they can't control it, and they're in a position of power. So they say, oh, you know, fuck Bitcoin, no one use it. And what they're really saying is, I can't control you with it, so please to God, don't use it, because I like controlling you.
Yeah, I mean I mean, money is really just a form of control. That's why governments control it. It's the ultimate form because you control what other, you know, like let's say that you create something and I want to buy it from you. Well, the government has nothing to do with any part of that transaction. They didn't create the good. They didn't create the need from me. They did no part. But what they did do is influence how we interact as a medium of exchange if we use their currency. So, and indirectly, they affect how much of the currency we get, which affects prices because, you know, if you're forced to price things higher because you have less money because you need to, you know, then that affects markets. So, yeah, man, you know, the rabbit hole goes so deep, and that's why it took me, you know, close to 6 years to really get there.
Mm-hmm. So moving on to my next question, what are you most looking forward to in the Bitcoin space?
So a couple things. I think part of it is the FUD. Like, you know, just like to kind of continue with that last part, like more people understanding how Bitcoin works and how it differs from Ethereum and other blockchains. More people understanding Bitcoin, not blockchain. Parker Lewis has a great article on Unchained Capital's website that I highly recommend everyone, if you haven't listened to it or haven't read it, check it out. But like spending less time, just like I'm really looking forward to spending less time correcting people and getting their facts straight, fighting misinformation, and more time building. Because, you know, there's a lot of things that Bitcoin still needs, like Lightning Network, like scaling Lightning. It's great, but it's crucial that we have these scaling solutions. I mean, part of my understanding of the rabbit hole of Bitcoin was that layer one was not the end all, right? Like that was kind of like what blocked me for so long into considering other cryptocurrencies as a potential solution, was because I didn't think about the scaling by layering. And so Lightning, you know, to that and Liquid side, I mean, there's, you know, a lot of different, layering solutions that are coming about. And, you know, I run a node myself, and like, it's exciting to see and be a part of, especially these scaling solutions, but like they've got a long way to go. And so I'm excited, like I'm looking forward to, and this is what my company Catalaxy Cash, what we do, is actually help businesses on board Bitcoin and Lightning payments so they can receive them as an alternative to, you know, paying Square and other merchant fees. So like advancing the Lightning Network so that we can move Bitcoin from a store of value into an actual medium of exchange so that people stop saying, oh, Bitcoin's never going to work because it can't buy coffee with it anymore. Really looking forward to that conversation being put to rest. Other thing I'm really excited about is just security of custody getting better. I mean, I think that's like the barrier entry for so many people. It's just they don't want to hold custody. And so they give it to other solutions or, you know, other people. And I think what Casa is doing in the space is super awesome, how they're kind of combining the, you know, self-custody with a third-party custodian, same with Unchained. I think like just seeing those types of like solutions and companies come about and get advanced, and having more people run their own nodes, having more people hold their own keys, and having more people understand multi-sig and Lightning. I think like getting the security and the scaling through Lightning, getting the security through multi-sig, you know, more spread throughout the ecosystem and more adopted, and you know, scaling solutions like Taproot coming about, like, you know, we'll see how that plays out, and just the Lightning Network. I think those are like the things that are really going to move Bitcoin from a store of value to a medium of exchange, and ultimately what's going to continue to drive the price up in fiat terms. So let's continue building the, you know, I love what Jack Mallers says about, like, you know, what's up haters, like, because he's right, like let's not like talk about Bitcoin anymore, like let's build it. And so, you know, if these so-called experts are going to continue to spread misinformation, well, let's prove them wrong. instead of just tell them they're wrong.
I love that. It makes me think of the Satoshi quote. If I, and this might not be word for word, but it's like, if you don't get it, I'm sorry, I don't have time to explain it to you. You know,
Yeah.
we got work to do. Like, we're constantly building Bitcoin forward. Everyone in the space, whether you're a developer or you're just buying it and holding it and spreading the good word of Satoshi around, like, we all play a massive role in this ecosystem, and it's so great to see. And dealing with FUD, one thing I wanted to touch on is, I wonder if you feel the same thing. Like, it can get, I feel like after a while of being in, like during the bear market when I got in, or the peak of last bull market, I should say. And throughout the bear market, I liked debating people and discussing people on like FUD and stuff and like old FUD. But now whenever someone comes in and just asks some like super old FUD, I'm like, oh my fucking God. Like, I can't do this for the 20,000th time and I just ignore it. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, I try to be patient. Like, that's actually like, if you like look on the website, we've for Catalyxy Cash, we've built, we're working on a rabbit hole resources page where I can just send people, because I'm just so sick of explaining the same crap over and over and over again. So yeah, I feel you on that for sure, man. And that's why we're building that page out, so I can direct people. So I basically am hoping to have like a answer to, Bitcoin uses a lot of energy. Here's 3 articles on why that's good, why it's good for Bitcoin. Oh, you want to talk about security and custody issues? Here's 3 issues of like filtering it out. So definitely like am trying to take steps to avoid having to repeat myself. And I that's why we created the company, because like, information is, I spend my time, and like I spend a lot of time learning what I've learned, got to where I am. There's a decade plus of experience in studying economics and money supplies and monetary policies across governments, and the history of money and how investments work, and the kind of like this, I didn't just end up here overnight. And so, time is money, right? And money is Bitcoin. So, we're trying to kind of take that next step and really, turn that access of information into something that's not only useful, but something that can free up my time so that I can go build Bitcoin further. Love
that, dude. And moving on to my last and final question, you can just get as bull-tard as you want, but what is your price prediction for the end of this year, 2021, and the end of 2030?
So, Satoshi and me would say quantity, right? Not price. So I should say that I'm not even looking at price now, but if we're talking about dollar terms, I put here on the sheet 120K for the end of this year. I actually think we probably hit above that before year end, and we probably end the year somewhere in a retrace. I think we're probably during this cycle gonna wind up doing one of 2 things. It's either the final cycle and it's over. We stop pricing it, which could happen. If I've studied the Weimar Germany kind of unfolding, and how the stock market of Weimar Germany went crazy up at the same time. So, we're kind of seeing that unfold in our current stock market. It's but anyway, if we unfold that this 4 years, then of course infinity, which is my price prediction for 2030 also. So in 2021, I think, we probably hit 200K in 2020, but I think we end somewhere between 100 and 150. I don't think Bitcoin's volatility is passed yet, especially not in percentage terms. So 2030 infinity, though, ultimately, I think if Bitcoin is going to work as a money, it can't be priced. Like, we cannot, I've thought about this over and over and over again. Like, like how does it ever work as a medium of exchange if we're tracking its price of, it's got to be the thing that we price things in. So by 2 halvings from now, 2030 infinity, I don't think we track the price of Bitcoin in fiat terms anymore, because I don't think fiat exists. By 2030, Bitcoin has reached its true form. It's no longer just a store of value. It's a medium of exchange. And so infinity, bullish.
I love that answer. That was literally the perfect answer. But dude, we've reached the end of the interview, and I really want to thank you for coming on. And before we close out the show, is there any shout outs or words of wisdom you want to leave with the audience?
Yeah. Want to give a couple shout outs. One to Jestifer for just like helping me really dive in. I think is it just at Jestifer on Twitter. He's just been instrumental in helping me learn Lightning Network and helping me kind of realize the vision of scaling solutions for Bitcoin. So shout out to him and the work he's doing to help that. Satbase.org is his website. Shout out to 50 Sat, my boy, who I assume like pulled some strings to help get me on here. So, he's been just an awesome dude to meet, and he's gotten me really introduced to all of you guys, BTC Kindergarten. So, really glad to have met you all. And then, shameless promotion, check out, like I said, Galaxy Cash. It's our Bitcoin ecosystem here in Colorado, and you can check us out at Cash Money. It's CACHE, like computer cash, cashmoney.io. We'll be updating that site and keeping things in there. But words of wisdom I want to leave with is, first off, don't sell. There is no sell button. They dropped that from, I think it was Bitcoin Core, was it 0.14? They removed the sell feature. So that don't sell your Bitcoin. There's billionaires that want them, and they don't care what price they buy them from you at. So don't sell them. I think Bitcoin ultimately is going to bring a lot of positivity to the world. And in a time after the last couple of years, with coronavirus and the pandemic and the lockdowns and the, divisiveness in Washington and, all of this stuff, right? And Kobe dying, just keep your head up, world. Things are going to get better. If you don't like the deck that you're getting dealt, buy more Bitcoin and, take control of your own future. So thank you, Nick, for having me on, man. I really appreciate it.
Let's go, dude. So if you made it to the end of this video or this podcast, leave a like. Go follow BAP on Twitter at BTCBAP. The link to his Twitter will be in the description below, as well as his other links. So go check out all of his stuff. Dude's a great dude. Go talk to him on Twitter. And yeah, closing this one out. I'll see you guys next week with a brand new guest. Peace.
Hold on to the pavements. Hate me, love me, for grateful recognition. Heard the lands like a filament.